forward to this. I've been doing this program now, really honored to be here with you for over 4 years. And we've had literally hundreds of guests. We've interviewed some really interesting people from a variety of topics. We've talked about so many different things, religious matters. We've talked about social matters, and all of these things are really important. They are topics that are important to Orthodox Christians. And tonight, what we thought we would do is turn it over to you. We want to hear from you. Sometimes it's nice to sit back and listen to a guest and talk about various issues of the day and learn. That's a very, very good thing. But I know, because I read Facebook and YouTube comments and so forth, that people have a lot of opinions about things. And so what we're asking you to do tonight is to call in with your opinion. And we've picked at least 2 really hot topics. They're topics, I think probably the first one is the hottest topic in Orthodox circles right now. And we'll talk about that in a second. So what we want you to do is give us a call at 1-855-AF-RADIO if you have an opinion about this particular topic. Obviously, we want everyone to be Christian in their approach. We want them to be gentle in the way that we speak about certain things. We don't want to speak ill of anyone, even if we disagree with them. I think that's what makes Ancient Faith a special place. And that is that we want to be a place where there can be a sense of maturity in discussing certain topics. However, it doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion. So we want you to express it tonight. So how we're going to do this is we're going to have at least 2 topics tonight. And the first one is going to be deaconesses. So we're going to ask Simon to put the lower third up. And we are going to talk about deaconesses first. And, you know, this topic has quite a bit of history in the last 6 months, especially in Orthodoxy, especially on the internet, but also especially on Ancient Faith. So let's talk a little bit about, it's going to give me an opportunity to talk a little bit about giving a framework to the idea of how did we get to this point today? And if you're not familiar with where we're at, I'm going to try to fill you in. So let's talk about this. And again, we want to hear from you. 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. Or you can send us a text message at 412-206-5012. We're also going to check the comment box. And if you have a comment, you want to put it in there, we'll read your comment on the air. Again, we want to try to be as respectful as possible, but give us your opinion. All right, so let's talk about deaconesses. Well, if we go back, we can say with surety that there were deaconesses. I'm not saying what they were yet, but just give me a chance. Historically, the Orthodox Church did have this office called deaconess. Now, it was not universal. It was almost unknown in the West. It was mostly in the East. And the history of this office is kind of unclear because it existed in different ways in different places. And I know that there may be some people that disagree with me saying that, but the reality is that it did actually exist in different places in different ways. Now, whatever the historical foundations of deaconesses were, whether it was purely for the ministry of women. And certainly we know that in terms of women, this was like the foundation of having deaconesses, that they were to minister to women, and specifically because women, all people, were baptized in the nude. And of course, at that time in the early church, adult baptism was in fact the norm. Of course, there was infant baptism, but for various reasons we don't have to go into, baptism of adults was the norm, and baptism in the nude was the norm. So you had women, for cultural reasons, reasons of modesty, that were ministering to women. And this particular office also had, there's some indication that it was a kind of honorific title for wealthy widows. Wealthy widows had been giving money to the church, and they may have been made a deaconess. Eventually, we know that there were certain canon laws that they had to be unmarried, or they had to be widows. They had to be of a certain age. Again, there's not a lot of consistency. Sometimes it was 60, sometimes it was 40. And that particular order fell out of the church. It fell into disuse. And frankly, that is not the only thing that fell into disuse. If you look at the ancient order and architecture of the church, for instance, during the Divine Liturgy, you would have the order of penitents. You would have the order of the catechumens who had to be dismissed from the liturgy. The penitents would stand outside. You had various orders. You had doorkeepers and so forth. And some of these orders fell out of disuse, and that system fell out of disuse. Now, for a long time, there was these deaconesses in certain places, used in certain ways. And I think we can say with a lot of certainty that deaconesses were not equal to a male deacon, at least from a liturgical standpoint. Deaconesses were not equal to male deacons. They had a specific role. Were they ordained at the altar? Yes. Were they receiving the same type of ordination? That is a question that is up for debate. Scholars have disagreed on that. Whatever the nature of the deaconess, there has been no deaconesses for at least since the 1300s. That order fell completely out of disuse. And we really didn't hear much about it until about the mid-1800s. And in the mid-1800s, there started to be mention of restoring this order of deaconess again. And it kind of picked up steam. And by the mid-1900s, in the early 1900s, the Russian church was going to talk about it. And then, of course, the Bolshevik Revolution happened in the 1917-1918 Council in Moscow. The Russian Revolution happened, and that kind of scrapped a lot of the things that the Russian church was discussing. In the mid-1900s, there was again this call to restore the order of deaconess. And again, it was studied to a certain extent, but there wasn't a lot of attention paid to it. And then in 1988, there was a conference in Rhodes, Greece, and it was a conference about women in the church. And in this conference, the Orthodox participants came out with a statement. It was probably the most bold statement to say that the Orthodox Church should do everything it can to restore this order of deaconess. But everybody agrees, and this is what's really interesting, everybody agrees virtually nothing happened after that. There was very little interest in the church in restoring the order of deaconess. Now, let's fast forward to 2024 of January and Ancient Faith Today Live, which we were so grateful and are so grateful for our partnership with Ancient Faith's former CEO, John Maddox. He went on a real exploration of this topic, and he explored this from different angles. It wasn't just giving one side of the issue. It was, what do scholars say? What do bishops say? The Bishop Saba of the Antiochian Orthodox Church in America, he gave a very erudite statement about deaconesses. And yes, we also allowed, or I should say, asked the people from the St. Phoebe Center to come on this program, on this documentary, and discuss it. And some people disagreed with that. However, it has to be admitted that we also had a absolute a person against that, Deacon Brian Patrick Mitchell, whom is a very good friend of mine, that he had an entire hour devoted to this program, to this topic on this program. And so that was very, very helpful. Silouan, we'll get to it. Okay, so you said, why are we talking about deaconesses when the real scandal in Orthodoxy is silence concerning the Moscow Patriarch? So Silouan, just hold on to your seat. We're getting there, okay? So I get to call the topics, and this is why we're talking about it tonight, okay? All right, now, so we're in the deaconesses, and we have this documentary, and then it explodes on the internet. And everybody else starts talking about deaconesses, and all the other YouTube channels, they start talking about deaconesses, right? Even some of them tried to jump the gun and say, well, whatever Ancient Faith says, like, this is what the real story is on deaconess. Okay, whatever. Now, we produced this documentary in 2024. We had a very respectful conversation. And then in May of 2024, during Holy Week, nobody saw this coming, at least not publicly. The Archbishop, the Orthodox Archbishop of Zimbabwe, and Simon, if you'd put up the first link, please. The Orthodox Archbishop of Zimbabwe, Metropolitan Seraphim, ordained a woman. Her name is Angelic Mullen. And I think I'm stating her name correctly. Angelic Mullen. And he ordained her at the St. Nectarios Mission Parish near Harare, Zimbabwe. All right. Now, this particular ordination, and you're going to see that up on the screen here. Okay. That particular ordination really, I think, took a lot of people by surprise. And Simon, if you don't mind just maybe scrolling down there, I'm just going to read a little bit of this. Now, this is written by the Religious News Service. Religious News Service, I'm going to be very honest, they're pretty left-leaning, so they were very happy about this. And here's what this particular article says. Simon, if you want to move down just a little bit, if you can, please. Oh, he can't scroll. Okay, sorry about that. So let me do this. I'm going to read it myself here. And basically what it says is, Eastern Orthodox Church ordained Zimbabwean woman as its first deaconess. For years, the Patriarchate of Alexandria in Africa has intensified its efforts to establish the female diaconate. It says on Thursday, May 2nd, the Orthodox Patriarchate of Alexandria in all Africa ordained in Zimbabwe the first deaconess of any patriarchate in the global Eastern Orthodox Church, marking the culmination of years of efforts to revive the female diaconate in the church. The Archbishop of Zimbabwe, Metropolitan Seraphim, ordained Angelic Molen at the St. Nectarius Mission Parish near Harare, the capital of the southern African country. The ceremony took place on Holy Thursday, a few days before the start of Orthodox Easter. The service's liturgy focused on the meaning of the Eucharist, which the new deaconess will distribute to the faithful as part of her new role. And then they quote her, Molen. At first, I was nervous about going into the altar, but when Metropolitan Seraphim blessed me to enter the altar as part of my preparation this week, those feelings went away and I felt comfortable. I am ready. Well, that was, first of all, a very tricky time because it was Holy Week. And it was Holy Week and everybody was in church like 10 hours a day. We have so many church services. And this was done in a way that it was done very quietly. And it was done in a kind of small mission parish in Africa. And, you know, I often don't give my own personal feelings about this, but I have to be honest and say that I was taken aback by it. I was taken aback by it because, first of all, it was done unilaterally through the Patriarchate of Alexandria. Now, Patriarchate of Alexandria came out and gave a very, very strange statement about it, basically saying nothing. It didn't really say anything of substance. It just said this happened and that we had been discussing it, but that the bishop didn't really ask us, etc., etc. And so my question to you is, with this quote unquote ordination of a woman to be a deaconess. Now, again, here's the problem. The problem is when we look at the ancient order of deaconess, it was not parallel to the male deacon. It was simply not a parallel order. And what this article shows is that this woman was ordained to the holy diaconate. I don't know how else to say this, right? Without the consent of the other Orthodox churches, and also without a kind of understanding of what this role actually is supposed to be. Because in the pictures in that, and you can of course Google it anytime, she was giving communion to both men and women. And it's very, very strange for if you have a woman who it's said is there to minister to women, that she is now giving communion to everyone who is coming up into receive the holy mysteries. And so it seemed very strange. It seemed very contradictory to me. And I would like to hear your opinions about this. What were your thoughts as this was going on? So I'm going to read some of the comments that are coming in here on YouTube. And if you go to youtube.com/Ancient Faith Ministries, you can join us there in the conversation. Also on Facebook, we're going to check the comments on Facebook to see what everybody is saying. And here's some of the comments that we're reading right now. It says, Death to Compromise says, unless they are going to start doing nude baptisms again, there's virtually no need for deaconesses. They certainly couldn't be what Alexandria did by ordaining a female, quote, deacon. All right, let's see. I'm just going to read comments that are actually on the topic. Solomon, again, we got his comment. We get it, Solomon. Let's see here. Christy Mertz. The only other reason I can see is a non-liturgical role in ministering to women, specifically women's issues. And of course, you know, that was the reason why it was justified by the Alexandrian Patriarchate. They said that, well, in Africa, we have a very specific culture. We have a very specific way of handling women's issues where men can't go. I was even on a clergy forum, and I was rebuked by another priest. He said, well, have you ever been to Africa and you don't understand the African culture? If you understood the African culture, you would see why they need women deacons. I'm not, frankly, convinced by that. I'm not convinced that they need to have the exact same liturgical role as deacons. And not only liturgical, but in terms of the deacon, the office of the deacon being, in many ways, this part of the ministerial priesthood. For instance, if you read about the ordination itself, and you read the prayers of ordination, it very specifically speaks about ministering at the altar. It speaks about this being a kind of like the first degree of a movement toward the priesthood. Not every deacon is becoming a priest, but some do, many do. Those of us who are priests were deacons at least for a short time. I was a deacon for 4 years. It was some of the most beneficial time of my life. But as a deacon, you are a cleric. You are a cleric. You are a part of that priesthood. With women, we have a little bit of a different story. Now, let's take a sidebar here. Women do have ministerial duties among the women. For instance, I live in Pittsburgh, and north of us, not too far, about 45 minutes away, is the Monastery of the Holy Transfiguration. And in fact, one of our former parishioners is a sister there, a nun there, mother actually. And when I serve the Divine Liturgy there is a woman who is blessed to serve in the altar. However, she does not serve as a cleric. She does not wear a sticharion. She does not wear an orarion. She simply serves, very simply, getting the candles, getting the censer. She'll come into the altar. She will get everything that I need in the altar. And that's because there's no other men there. There are no men at the women's monastery. And so that's why they have her there, right? But she never asks, oh, I need a title, right? You need to call me Mother Deacon. She never says this. She serves humbly and simply and sincerely. So we have a little bit of a disconnect. And one of the questions is whether the motivation, and we discussed this on our on the documentary, whether the motivation for having a woman as a deaconess is motivated more by the true restoration of what a deaconess really was, and ministering in that way to those women because it is necessary. And for instance, a scholar that I deeply revere, who is one of the top biblical scholars in the world, frankly, Dr. Edith Humphrey, says that, you know, though she is not for the ordination of women, certainly in this manner, and she is not for the restoration of deaconesses as it is appearing, for instance, in the St. Phoebe Center and so forth, she does say, look, there are certain things that women are just going to be better at ministering to women about. For instance, if a woman has a miscarriage, if a woman is beaten, God forbid, by her husband or abused by her husband, she wants a woman to come in there and talk to her. I get that. I totally understand that. But that doesn't replace the priest. It doesn't replace the deacon. It simply means that this woman is going to minister to other women. And frankly, I have no problem with that whatsoever. However, what I have a problem with is that we now are doing this not out of the motivation to restore an ancient office to its rightful apostolic place, whatever that is. Instead, what we're doing is we are creating something new. We are creating a new office, essentially a deacon who is a woman. It's not just a deaconess, right? It's a deacon who is a woman with the exact same liturgical functions and, I assume, ministerial functions as a male deacon. And that is very troubling. That Death to Compromise says here, I can't read the whole thing. It says, the ordination in Zimbabwe just exposed this blank for what it is. Well, possibly, the problem here is they're all the way in Africa. So are they being used to assert a certain agenda, right? Is there money flowing into Africa and saying, hey, if you do this, we'll give you money? I don't know what's going on. So I don't know what the motivation is. It seems to be more about rights. It seems to be more about equality, right? It seems to be more about egalitarianism and not necessarily about restoring an office because either there is a need or because we feel that the fullness of the church is somehow compromised by not having this. None of that has ever been demonstrated. None of it. So let's look at some of the other comments here. Christy, this is a very shocking development. Have you heard why the Patriarchate of Alexandria felt the need to ordain a woman? The article doesn't seem to say. No, it does not. It only says that they have a specific need. It never outlines the need. It never says specifically, for instance, that men cannot go into certain places where women are. There has never, to my knowledge, been any specific motivations or justifications for the ordination of a woman. And let me also be clear about this. This is very, very important. I don't make these statements out of hatred for women. I don't make these statements that I somehow demean women. I have 3 daughters. I have to face them after the show, right? I have a wife. I have women in my parish without whom my parish would not run. However, we all kind of understand what the role of the priest is. And Father Stephen DeYoung very beautifully in that documentary. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it, especially his extended interview that's out there on YouTube. He goes through and speaks about why priesthood is male in character. And I think the Orthodox Church needs to do more work on that. They have not really expressed this other than the tradition. This is the way we always do it, but we haven't really expressed this in a way that is theologically rock solid, the male character of the priesthood. Death to Compromise says, the ordained lady commune parishioners, they are creating way for female priests. Fact. Could be. I don't know what their motivations are. I have no idea. I think you're right. Certainly, Dr. Carrie Frost opened that door in her book when she said, we're not here to discuss women priests, but if the future generation wants to discuss it, let them discuss it. And I think, that's going to show you where this may lead. And they're very patient about this. Let's see here. What else do we have here? Rick Porter, this is an extremely volatile and divisive topic. Let's all approach this with a prayerful heart. I agree with you, Rick, and I did want to say one more thing. I think that we should pray especially for, and I'm just kind of reminding myself this right now. We should pray for Angelic Molin, this woman that, through no fault of her own, I think, is kind of at the heart of this controversy. I'm gonna promise to pray for her. Now, I think, I can't imagine the consequences of this. For instance, if she were to come outside of Africa and go to an Orthodox church here in America or in Russia, there's no way this is going to be accepted. It's just not going to be accepted, and it's going to get very ugly. And I think this is why we need to be very, very careful about this issue, but we certainly need to pray for the church in Africa. We need to support the church in Africa, but also we need to pray for Angelic Molin. Let's see here. Some more comments. If the church is going to consider, this is Deacon Christopher McCullough, if the church is going to consider restoring the female diaconate, I'd prefer them to wait until there isn't all this confusion about gender in the world. What's another 50 to 100 years? That's another topic that we need to talk about. It was possibly going to be the third topic, but I don't think we're going to get there tonight. So I agree with you, but they don't want people to kick the can down the road. And this is, we're at a particular moment in our world, Father Deacon. I think that this is, everything, the time is right? Politically, emotionally, anthropologically, with the confusion about what a man is, what a woman is. Can you imagine our grandparents being confused about what a woman is? It just seems unbelievable. So we have to be very, very careful about this, and pray for the church, and pray that we come to some sensibility about that. All right. Any other perspectives here? I don't see really anything here. All right. So no callers. I want you to call in. I want to hear your voice. What's happening over on Facebook? I wanted to see what's going on Facebook here. Let's see if there's any topics. And anybody talking about this? All right. I don't see anybody talking about it on Facebook. Do we have any comments on it? All right, let's see here. All right. Okay, very good. Let me get that topic. So Brian Hustal says, sounds like an awful lot of ambiguity, which never ends well. Brian, I agree with you. I think that the mistakes that were made here were not informing the other Orthodox churches, not getting their buy-in, not really making the call, the argument for this at all, and simply doing it, and then saying, well, here's what's going to happen. Hopefully it will spread. My guess is it's not going to spread. I think this is going to be dead in the water. I think this is going to be kind of a one-shot deal. The churches, however, I will say, have been oddly silent about this. They're not talking about it at all. First of all, part of it was that this was something that was done during Holy Week, and people didn't necessarily notice it. But I'll tell you who did notice it: the Roman Catholics. They noticed it, and the Roman Catholics said, oh, the Orthodox are ordaining women. And they don't understand that the reality is, no, the Orthodox are not ordaining women. And so, we have to be very, very careful about that. All right. Gia Xenakis says, I too am concerned about the gender fluidity and what it will do to the next generation. Gia, I agree with you 100%. All right. Very, very good. So, with the time remaining, let's go on to another topic. And this particular topic, I think some people don't really understand. All of us have this experience of church where we go to our parish, we support our parish, we love our priest, we sing in the choir, we are involved in coffee hour or the parish council or the Sunday school or whatever it is. But there's a bigger question here of Orthodox unity. Now, Orthodox unity is an issue that is much more important than most people think. Orthodox unity is important because, as the New Testament says, as the scriptures say, as the history of the church says, there is nothing more important than the unity between Christians. Now, this unity takes place many ways. It takes place in love for one another, but it also takes place in the unity of the faith and that we gather ourselves around the bishop, right? This is that Ignatian model of episcopal leadership, okay? And in the history of the church, starting with the various earliest examples of the church, we have, and I'm sure all of you have heard of the famous pentarchy, right? The pentarchy of the church, when there were these 5 great patriarchates, the 5 original patriarchates. So you had Rome at the head, Constantinople, which was actually much later, but went to second because of it being the capital of the empire, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. And yes, Rome was the first among equals. Rome had certain limited privileges, especially when they were called upon to do so. And the most enduring example of unity in the church was these 5 patriarchates and their daughter churches getting along in unity. Of course, there were problems in the church. There were heretics that had to be dealt with. And there were tensions. There were schismatics. But the church's unity held together. It held together, of course, and that's another documentary that we did with the non-Chalcedonians. That was a very tragic part of church history. But our focus has to turn to Rome, the papal Roman church. And what happened was, beginning with the time of Charlemagne in 800 on Christmas Day, Charlemagne creates and is made the head of the so-called Holy Roman Empire. Holy Roman Empire. And this Holy Roman Empire had a pope at its head, and the pope was seen as someone with all power over all the churches invested in him. And their understanding of unity became not unity through conciliarity, unity through churches communing in love with one another, sitting down in council, discussing things, but rather the unity of one bishop, the Bishop of Rome, over the entire church. And these so-called papal claims of authority, which led to the papacy eventually developing into universal jurisdiction over every single Christian, became intolerable for the other four churches: Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. And today that is what we call the Orthodox Church. Everybody knows about the Great Schism of 1054. Of course, that's a misnomer. Things were bad long before that. That was a kind of trigger mechanism that really sealed the deal. So, really, throughout Orthodox history for 2,000 years, there has always been disagreements, rifts, politics, even wars between Orthodox neighbors, but the Church's faith has always remained steadfast and one. But, now here's the thing. Today, and I challenge anybody to prove me wrong on this, we actually see a greater divide in the Orthodox world than we've really ever seen before. There's a great divide in Orthodoxy in many different ways. And of course, and someone mentioned it before, and that is this division between Constantinople and Moscow, which began in 2018. And again, Simon, I don't know if you can put that up there, but for some people, this may not affect you. For some of us, this is a very big deal. So this particular rift began in 2018. Now, there have been other rifts between Orthodox churches before. And by the way, before Roman Catholics call me or comment in the comment box and they say, well, Roman Catholicism doesn't have this problem, please, this is not true. That there is a tremendous rift in the Roman Catholic world between the traditionalists and Pope Francis, and you have Pope Francis excommunicating traditional bishops, right? You have traditional Roman Catholics that are moving across the country to find a traditional Roman Catholic church because they don't want to go to a Novus Ordo church. So we can't say that this kind of rift does not exist in the Catholic Church, in the Roman Catholic Church. It does. However, this rift in the Orthodox Church is very serious. And this rift between Constantinople and Moscow started in 2018, and it was over Constantinople essentially creating a new church body in Ukraine from existing schismatic bodies, when they had previously said that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church was the legitimate Orthodox Church, and Metropolitan Onufry was the bishop of Ukraine, Metropolitan of Kiev, and then all of a sudden, he wasn't. And this particular event has really shaken the Orthodox world. It has deeply affected our unity. Now, people that just go to their church and they pray and they go to liturgy and receive communion and they go to coffee hour, they may not feel this. But this is a big deal to those of us that value unity. And the other problem that we have, and it is the elephant in the room. It was actually the topic of the first show that I ever did for Ancient Faith Today Live. And that is Orthodox unity in this country, in the United States, and actually in the Western world. There is no Orthodox unity in the Western world according to the ancient model. The ancient model is in a land or in a region, in a particular geography, whatever that is, you have one church. So when you go to Greece, you go to the Greek Orthodox Church. You don't go to the Russian Orthodox Church in Greece. If you go to Russia, you go to the Russian Orthodox Church. You don't go to the Greek Orthodox Church in Greece. But when you come to America, when you go to Australia, when you are in Great Britain, when you are in Ireland, and in other Western countries, including South America, then now you've got the Greek Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Antiochian Orthodox Church, the Serbian Orthodox Church, the Romanian Orthodox Church, and then you have like 3 different kinds of all of them, because we have these parallel jurisdictions, okay? Now, here's our problem. Our problem is we are, in my opinion, denying the most basic principle of the Orthodox faith by not having a united church in these lands. And I've heard all of the justifications for not having unity. I've heard we're too young. I've heard we're too immature. I've heard we're too scattered. I've heard we still have immigrants coming. I've heard it all. But what I never hear is the justification of why we feel so callous about forcing ourselves into unity. Why is it so difficult for us to love one another, to give up our agendas in a particular way where we actually are living the fullness of the Orthodox faith by being united around one synod in one land and one church of America? Instead, we have, I don't even know what it is now. I've lost count. Is it 12, 13, 14 jurisdictions? And we can say, well, it's fine that we have all of these, but it's not. It's not fine. It's not good, because each jurisdiction has its own agenda. And sometimes the agenda is very self-centered, and it's more important than the agenda of asserting the Orthodox faith to the people that need it. Now, again, people might say, well, we have people that are coming to the Orthodox faith. It's true. We do have people that are coming to the Orthodox faith. But as a priest, when I have to explain to people why the church down the street is not under my bishop, why the church 5 miles down is under my bishop, but the church next to that isn't under my bishop, and then there's like 6 different bishops in Pittsburgh, they don't understand this. They cannot wrap their brains around it. And so I tell them it's a temporary problem and we're working to fix it, but I'm not convinced that we're working to fix it. So here's the question, and we don't have many minutes left, but I'd love to hear from some of you. Do we Orthodox have a unity problem? Are we more comfortable with being divided, with having our kind of ethnic enclaves and ethnic agendas, rather than joining together in one land and inspiring this land with our love for one another? And what we do is instead on the internet, we literally, people are not even, they're not even ashamed of it. They will name bishops not of their jurisdiction, and they will call them heretics, and they will call them of the devil, right? Because of this disunity. Now, it could be that there are certain bishops which are doing things that they should not be doing. We can talk about that another day. But as Orthodox Christians, we absolutely must be united. So, what do you think? Do we Orthodox have a unity problem? I'm not saying we're not the true church. I'm not saying we are not the ancient apostolic one Catholic church. We are. We are the one holy Catholic and apostolic church, full stop. There's no doubt about it. However, dear ones, we have a unity problem. We have a unity problem because it is much easier for us to say, I don't need you. I don't need this church. I don't need this entire continent. I don't need to be in communion with all of these people, right? And so we have to find a way where we are forcing ourselves, not by a pope, God forbid, not by a pope. If the Roman Catholic Pope wants to restore himself to the original role of the undivided church, then we are happy to have that. We are happy when he will accept the Orthodox faith, when he will denounce Catholic heresies, Roman heresies. Yes, we'll be under Rome again. But until that day comes, we still have to figure this out. We still have to understand that our lack of a Roman pope cannot be placed with a Constantinopolitan pope. You can't do that. So what is the answer? All right, so I'm going to look at some comments here. It says, as a recent convert, oh, here we go. Harry Garris. I think one of the realities of the modern world is that people are way more comfortable with distinctions and diversifications. That's a good point. That's an actually very, very interesting point. Eki says, or Iki, I am a recent convert. The disunity is so sad. It is very confusing as a newer Orthodox person. Iki, hang in there, okay? Hang in there. All right, OB says, thank you. It's wild that my town has 3 Orthodox churches less than a mile away from each other. Think of how much we could accomplish on our own if we came together. Amen, OB. I agree with you. Let's see here. Death to Compromise says, disunity shouldn't really matter as long as there is unity of faith. Death to Compromise, I would agree with you if history agreed with you. But history doesn't agree with you. This is the problem. And I say that with respect. Unity, anyone who reads the New Testament, just a cursory reading, especially of the epistles of Paul, the most important thing that he said again and again to each community is to be united. And then you have Ignatius, who is the disciple of St. John the Evangelist. He gives this expression of unity, and he says, where the bishop is, there is the Catholic Church. There is the fullness of the church. And so this is very important that we understand that the structure of our unity is really an expression of the truth of the faith. And when we don't live this, we're actually not living the fullness of the Orthodox faith. Here's another comment. Eki says, we absolutely have a unity problem. We would rather stick to our ethnic agendas and cultures rather than getting the only thing right, which is being a Christian. Solomon says, I believe this is all part of the maturing process. America is too immature. I know you said that's a regular excuse, but I believe valid for now. Okay, I hear what you are saying. However, at what point are we going to be mature enough? What is the measure of maturity to assume that now we are ready to be one church in America or wherever we're talking about? And this is the problem. There is no such measure, right? This measure doesn't exist. Most of the wealth is in the Western world, right? Many of the people are in the Western world. The Orthodox Church is growing. We have tremendous schools here. We have tremendous bishops and priests and deacons. So what actually is the sign of maturity that we are looking for? And that's what I would ask you, Solomon. Nick Chef says, Amen. Sam Cook, is the problem of overlapping jurisdictions making the problem of not enough priests worse? That's a really good question, Sam. So for those of you that don't know about this problem, and Father Andrew Stephen Damick talked about this on his channel, really, really good presentation about the problem of the diminishing number of priests, and that we are not going to have enough priests in the next generation. And in fact, this problem could be hitting us in as soon as 10 to 15 years. So it's another topic. Sam, I don't know if it actually affects it that much. I would say smaller parishes, this is my opinion, smaller parishes, so that is jurisdictions that have smaller parishes, are going to have a lot harder time staying afloat. This is just the truth. Okay? So you're going to have priests that don't get paid. And if you have a priest that doesn't get paid, now you're spreading him so thin that he's not free to do his ministry. And that's a problem. The New Testament, again, is very clear. St. Paul said that, the ox that spreads the grain should be able to eat it. And so it's very important that we as Christians support our priests and all of our clergy. All right. Dimitri says, you cannot force unity. Well, let me give you, Dimitri, if you don't mind, an example about this. You cannot force unity. So I think orthodoxy in its conciliar conception, I'm not talking about the whole world, but I'm talking about each Orthodox church. So let's take the Antiochian Orthodox Church, right? So in Antioch, in Lebanon, right, and Syria, you have a synod. And that synod is made up of all of the ruling bishops of the Antiochian Orthodox Church. They are, believe it or not, forced by canon to meet twice a year. This is an ancient canon. So this happens in every national church: the Romanian Orthodox Church, the Serbian Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Orthodox Church in America, which is an autocephalous church. They are forced by canon to meet twice a year, whether they like it or not, whether they want it or not. Those bishops have to sit under the presidency of their primate, of their first hierarch, whether it's a patriarch or metropolitan or an archbishop. and they have to meet and they have to work things out for the good of their churches. My question is, why can we not do that on a worldwide level? Why can we not force the bishops to meet once a year, to meet twice a year? That is, not all the bishops in the world, but the heads of all the Orthodox churches in the world, force them to meet, right? Not under the current rules, but under the ancient rules. You have to be able to have some mechanism to get people together. We do this in parishes. You force unity in parishes. The priest comes in and he says, I'm the priest. whether you like me or not, I'm the priest. The bishop says, I'm the bishop, and his job is to unify everybody. The priest's job, literally, isn't to swing a censer. The priest's job isn't to, have the sacramental grace to forgive sins. That's all well and good. But the priest's first job is to maintain the unity of the faith, as St. Paul says, in the bond of peace. That's the job of the priest. So in fact, unity is forced at every level of the church because we are commanded it by the New Testament. So why does the Orthodox Church feel that we don't need to be unified? And this is a problem. Lisa Crowter says, I personally think that many of the Orthodox people in America greatly desire unity, but I don't think that our, quote, mother churches and bishops desire us to be unified under one jurisdiction. It's an interesting history, Lisa. Go back and read the history of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s in America. There was actually more Orthodox unity then than there is now. Very interesting. Patrick Fleming, has Orthodox unity been reduced to being able to commune between jurisdictions? Yeah, pretty much. Ashton Miller, it'd be nice if all the jurisdictions were united here, but not so long as our theology is united. That's the main thing that matters, right? Ashton, again, I agree with you, but this should not be an either or proposition. We need to be unified in the faith, but we all need to be on the same team. This is very important. And again, I'm not saying this is not a secular principle. This is the principle of the church. This is the principle of tradition. Let's see here. Death to compromise. A lot of this disunity could even be a lot from the Russian Revolution, since St. Tikhon was working to fix that. It's possible, but there was this unity before that. I think, let me give my opinion on that. I think I agree with you that history has a lot to play into this question. It's not just the Russian Revolution. It is the Ottoman Empire, right? It was the Ottoman Empire. It was the end of World War I, where the Ottoman Empire was defeated and those countries were divided up, right? And then the Ottomans were given Turkey, the people that were there, that is. And so that particular political issue is an important factor in the disunity that we have. But again, I would say we need to fix it. And I agree. St. Tikhon was working to fix that in this country. If you go and read the address of St. Tikhon about unity in this country, he had a vision for what the church was to be. And we blew it. We really blew it. It was really quite sad. And so I hope that someday we will move forward with this. A couple of other comments, and then we're going to wrap it up. We have OB says, Michael Zalesnik says, can we please keep this conversation going after it is over? Continuing dialogue is important. Sure, do it. OB says, well, I've got an idea for the laity. Go and meet Orthodox Christians at the other parishes in your area. Go to their events, go to their Vespers, crash coffee hours. Unity starts at home. I like that idea. That's really good. Crash a coffee hour. I'm going to get a t-shirt that says that, OB. I like that. All right. Gothic extravaganza. Yeah, the rift in the Roman Church is going to get bigger, I suspect, with the one cardinal they recently excommunicated. Yeesh. Yeah, I agree. That it's really looking bad there. And then, then they say, oh, but we have the Pope. Well, I mean, what good is it doing you? I mean, there is absolutely as much disunity there. Rick Porter, we have too much pride in our ethnic backgrounds. Many reap now than before. I like my ethnicity. I'm Russian by ethnicity, but I like the food. I love the language, but I'm an Orthodox Christian first. I'm not a Russian first. I'm certainly not an American first. I'm a lover of Christ first. I'm a follower of Christ first. Let's see here. Harry Garris, whereas a mother church might feel more of an onus to hold on to their refugees that didn't migrate willingly, but were fleeing persecution. Sure, I get it. Absolutely. Let's see here. Okay, Ashton Miller says, I do agree. Thank you for your response. I do agree that we should find unity. Solomon, such a great topic. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Let me look at Facebook here. I don't know how I lost it again. Hold on here. Give me 1 second. This is live. All right. So on the Ancient Faith Facebook page, it says, let's see here. Brian Hustall. I'm not exactly sure what I'm seeing, so hopefully I'm not missing everything here. Brian Hustall, my good friend, says, had a very joyful experience this past Lent, visiting both the Greek and Antiochian churches here in Fort Wayne, both unique and diverse, but very welcoming. God bless you, Brian. It's good to have you. David Novak, all Orthodox bishops in America in one room and start talking, right? And lock the doors and don't bring them lunch until they work it out. Mark Nagy, he didn't say that. David didn't say that. I said that. Thanks, David. Mark Nagy, I know that growing up in a Carpatho-Russian church and then graduating from college, moving to a city with a Greek Orthodox church felt strange. Sure, it did. That's right. But you know what? That part of it is easy to fix. That part of it is really easy to fix. That's not the problem. So, Mark, I get it. I totally understand. Rebecca Blyavot, I just tuned in. I'm a little surprised to hear the presenter say that somehow the priest's job is to preserve unity in the bond of peace and dismissing the grace of ordination a little glibly. I might have missed some context. Yes, sorry, Rebecca. I'm not, no, what I said was that if we reduce, thank you for questioning that, because I don't want to be misunderstood. If we reduce the priesthood, and now I'm thinking of the Roman Catholics, right? This is why I say it, Rebecca. I'm thinking of the Roman Catholics because they have, you talk about a priest shortage? What do they have now? One priest for every 2,000 people, 3,000 people? It's some absurd number, right? And we know that's not our model. That will never be our model. But here's what happens, Rebecca. In that model, the priest, and I have Roman Catholic priest friends, guys, I am not disrespecting you, but the priest's role in the modern Roman Catholic Church in America is almost purely functional. He is functional to come in and have a valid mass. Now, again, don't misunderstand me. They do more than that, but they don't do much more than that because they don't have time. They're serving 2,000-3,000 people. So the large Roman Catholic parishes are not run by priests. I guarantee you that. They are run by lay people and they are run by nuns. Okay? They're run by lay people. And it's their mentality often is, I need a priest for a valid mass. What I'm saying is, It reduces ordination merely to being able to forgive sins, being able to, change the bread and the wine into the body and blood of Christ. But this is not simply what the priesthood is about. The priesthood is not about the power to do something. The priest is the father of the community, just like a family. The family has to stay together, right? The family has to stay together. And the father needs to do a really good job keeping the family together. He cannot do it by coercion, but his job is to keep the family together in love, And that's where some guys, by the way, fail. And I would say that's where some priests fail, and that's where some bishops are failing, because they're not keeping the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace in love in the parish, in the state, in the diocese, in the land. This is what is the most important. I'm a priest, and I am not dismissing the grace of the priesthood glibly. I promise you. My father was a priest. My grandfather was a priest. My great uncle was a priest. I have 2 uncles who were priests. Me and my brothers went to seminary. I love the priesthood. I respect the priesthood. But the priesthood is more than just being a sacramental functionary. That's the point that I was trying to make. All right. Woo! Last one. And then we got to go. Father Tom, can you invite some U.S. bishops to talk about Orthodox unity? The bishops are responsible for unity. We can try, but we don't want to embarrass anyone. We never want to point fingers at anyone. We want to always be respectful. Gothic extravaganza. As this is winding down, I want to thank you, Ancient Faith Radio, the presiding father host. That's me. And all my fellow commenters. God love you all. And Nathaniel Master says, Father Thomas had bishops on previously, so I don't think it would be hard to accomplish. No, for sure. Absolutely. And then it says, last comment, Alaskan Orthodoxy. Yay, Alaska. We will have Orthodox unity when we take Orthodox tradition and piety seriously. Amen, Alaska unity, Alaskan Orthodoxy. Amen. We've got to take the Orthodox tradition, and that means all of the teaching, all of the history, all of the theology, all of the anthropology, where a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and the Lord Jesus Christ is the King of the world, and we believe in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and we don't compromise on anything, but we put God and the Lord Jesus Christ above all things, including our jurisdiction and ethnicity. All right. Nobody called in. You guys, next time you got to call in. I'm hoping we'll do that again. All right. So this was fun. Thanks for your comments. It was really enjoyable. I hope you liked it. Give us some feedback on this. Would you like to do this again? Maybe once every so often, give us a thumbs up. Tell us what's going on. Send me an email. All right. So you can send me a text at 412-206-5012. You can do that anytime, or you can send an email at aft@ancientfaith.com. All right, so as we wrap this up, thanks to Simon, thanks to Trudy, thanks to Melissa, thanks to our fearless leader, CEO, Melinda Johnson. She does such a good job, and she never gets a lot of credit on air, but I got to tell you, I have tons of respect for her, and I appreciate her very, very much and her leadership. Also, thanks to all of you. We will be back next week. Hey, we've got another documentary coming up. So a big documentary is coming up next week, and this particular topic is so important. We've had documentaries on many, many different subjects. They are important subjects. You know, we got a little bit of heat about, well, why should we be talking about this? Because this is already settled. Well, it's not settled if some people don't think it's settled. And that's the problem, right? So we have to talk about these things. I get that the Fifth Ecumenical Council already settled the issue of universalism, and that's what we're going to talk about next week. Will all be saved? Examining universalism and the Last Judgment. We have a huge slate of experts and theologians that are going to come and talk to us about universalism. There are some Orthodox Christians that really are pushing it. So we need to talk about what is the Orthodox understanding of judgment, of heaven, of hell. Is hell eternal, or is everybody saved? So tune in. You're not going to want to miss that next Tuesday, July 16th, beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central Time. And that's our show for tonight. Remember to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/ancientfaithtoday. Share out our program after that's posted. Give us your feedback and contact us with any ideas or topics that you might want to hear about. Join us next Tuesday evening. Big show, Universalism, for Ancient Faith Today. Good night, everybody.